This is the story of when Sally of Bangor-on-Dee met the scarce yellow Sally stonefly in 1959.
When Sally met Sally, who would have thought it? I, Sally from Bangor-on-Dee, a lover of nature, obsessed with finding stoneflies, would meet the stonefly of all stoneflies, the scarce yellow Sally, all those years ago. On the 10th of February 1959, I met the ecologist Hugh Bernard Noel Hines on the riverbank when he discovered the scarce yellow Sally. I was so excited, it was a special moment. I can remember it like yesterday. It was cold, but you didn't feel the cold when you were young. I was wearing a lovely polka dot dress, hats and wellies. I still wear that hat and wellies to this very day. I was so carefree then. I would walk along the River Dee looking and listening to nature. I listened to 50s and 60s music, and I always loved dancing. I still dance, although maybe a bit slower these days.
When we were surveying for the scarce yellow stonefly, we used a technique called kick sampling. This involves getting into the river and disturbing the rocks and cobbles on the bottom of the river with your foot and waiting for the river to wash the dislodged sallies into a net. This meant that we could bring them to the riverbank and identify them. The scarce yellow Sally has a really important ecological role. It helps the environment around it become more stable and more regulated. This means it's more resilient if change or pressure happens to the environment.
I have always been inspired by the poetry of ecologist Edward Newman, written in 1861. Such beautiful observations of nature. Lastly come the heavy stoneflies, known in science as Perlina, very like domestic crickets, but are river-loving insects. Their heads rather broad and flattened, their eyes small and round and distant, forewings flat and hind wings folded, larger, broader than the forewings, larvae more than half aquatic, nimbly swimming in the water, nimbly diving in the water, nimbly running on the bottom. I would collect the shells of the stoneflies close to the riverbank. I was a dreamer, happiest surrounded by the natural world. I was often seen looking for bugs and searching the river for the scarce yellow Sally. It was amazing that day to know that she did exist. After meeting the ecologist Hugh Bernard Noel Hines, I was keen to find out more about his work. I found his report published by Liverpool University in the local library. Although the stonefly had been known for over a century in other UK rivers, this was a special moment for this area. It was such a rare find.
These are both points at which I had collected regularly during the winters of previous years without finding the insect. During the post-war period, this part of the river had been slowly recovering from mild pollution, which had at times caused scattered growths of sewage fungus downstream as far as Bangor. It seems very probable that before 1958 the scarce yellow Sally had been confined by this pollution to deep water in downstream of Bangor. On the 10th of March 1959, a further visit to Bangor and a morning's hard work produced 12 nymphs of the scarce yellow Sally, and of these 9 emerged as adults, 4 males, 5 females, in the laboratory between the 18th of March and the 2nd of April. The nymphs were scarce and were found only far out in the river where the flow was swift and deep.
So back in 1959, when the species was described, there was more of a sense of communal use to the waterways within the UK. So people would spend their weekends bathing in the waters, exploring the river's edge, and just generally relaxing and using that as their downtime, compared to now where we use the rivers far less due to advancements in modern technology, but also due to pollution and the status of our waterways. The River Dee, for example, has hundreds of sewage discharge points which go into the river, which make an unsuitable environment for species such as the scarce yellow Sally.
Nimbly swimming in the water, nimbly diving in the water, nimbly running on the bottom, hiding under little pebbles, often coming out and creeping on the bank and on the grasses, crawling up the trunks of willows, hiding in the cracks and crannies. When the pupa is quite ready to become a winged imago, then it grasps the bark of willows, or the rounded stems of rushes, or the pliant blades of grasses, by its hooked claws firmly anchored. Then the back splits open lengthwise, and the perfect fly emerges, flying softly over the streamlet to become the prey of fishes. Seeing this, the wily angler makes an imitation stonefly, which, the fatal hook concealing, is appended to the horsehair and dropped softly on the surface of the bright and dimpled river. And there, scarce a moment floating tempts the lurking trout or grayling irresistibly to seize it.
So in 2017, after years and years of survey work, a biologist known as John David Boker rediscovered the scarce yellow Sally in the River Dee. And this was a huge achievement, not only for the species, but just for biologists everywhere rejoicing that the species had come back from being invisible to being back in our lives. So in 2021, we were contacted by BugLife about becoming a project partner for the Scarce Yellow Sally project. Chester Zoo has a proven track record with animal husbandry and developing care techniques that we were looking to impart on the project to see if we could potentially have a safeguarded population of scarce yellow Sally here at Chester Zoo. So what made the project incredibly rewarding and challenging for us at the same time was that there wasn't a lot of information on how to look after the scarce yellow Sally. There's limited data available about how they actually behave in the wild, let alone in a setting where we could care for them here at Chester Zoo. So everything we learned about them was not only new to us, but often new to science as well. And getting to know how the species reproduces, how they feed, their general behaviour, and interesting things like different times of the day they'd be more active, and learning that cycle, develop and be successful in reproducing the scarce yellow Sally here at Chester Zoo.
Life around the river has changed so much. It was always a busy place for picnics, swimming and meetups. I also remember the River Dee bursting its banks. I was 15 years old. Our house downstairs was flooded. It was awful because my mum couldn't swim. She was trapped upstairs until the water receded. At the time, There were no flood defences in place as there are now to halt the water spilling over the banks, across the road and right down the main street. The Royal Oak close to the bridge was the first in line to be flooded. The school bus to Penley High School was cancelled as the roads around the village were also flooded. As a teenager, this was all very exciting. I had a rowing boat and remembered rowing down Bangor-on-Dee High Street and managed to rescue an old man who couldn't swim, rowing him to safety further down the street. Everyone helped each other in those days, sweeping and mopping water out of each other's homes whenever you could. Today, the scarce Yellow Sally is even more relevant to me as I get older. I feel, unlike my younger self, more invisible since I retired. I felt a bit lost, but I do things to feel empowered and get involved with stuff around me. I still love to dance and listen to 50s and 60s music and have joined a local choir. I wander around the countryside, close to the river, and reflect on the beauty and fragility of our natural surroundings. I still search most days around the river for the scarce Yellow Sally.